Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the CPO Strategy Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Parch, and this week we'll be joined by Ashifa Jumani, Director of Procurement at TELUS. We'll be talking about procurement's talent shortage, the industry's gender imbalance, and also why companies could be making a massive mistake by not implementing supplier diversity into their supply chains. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hello and welcome to the CPO Strategy Podcast.
Hello, Ashifa, and welcome to the CPO Strategy Podcast. How are you doing? You okay?
Hi, Sean. Yeah, I'm doing well. How about you?
Fantastic, brilliant. Yeah, it's towards the end of our day now on a Friday afternoon, so you can't beat that, can you? I know it's the start of your day, but
Yes.
I'm sure it's you've got all that to come.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's great to have you here on the CPO Strategy Podcast. What we're doing. I would love to sort of learn a little bit more about you and your journey as a way of sort of starting us off. So why was procurement the place for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to UBC and have a Bachelor of Science degree, so something completely different to what I'm doing now. I sort of fell into procurement, and I have to say it was kind of love at first sight. I had a wonderful mentor named Brenda Wiley, who I met as a junior buyer in my first procurement job. And I started out buying inventory and working in logistics, then working directly with suppliers, where I fell in love with negotiating and bringing deals together. I have been in computer distribution, the finance sector, pharmaceuticals, and now the technology sector at TELUS for over 13 years. I get to lead an amazing team of talented individuals, and I work on really cool projects, which is likely the reason I'm still there.
It's interesting that you say you fell into procurement, because I think a lot of industry professionals they feel the same. Was it something that you just thought one day, actually I'd really like to do that? Was there a mentor of yours that was in procurement and you followed suit? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was something that I fell into in one of my first jobs, and my mentor was somebody who was purchasing at the time. She was buying computer distribution, and I paired up with her, started hanging out with her, and we just, I think, went on that journey together. So being able to connect with someone who was already doing it and really loved it and could show me the ropes was instrumental.
It's fantastic, and as you say, you've been in your current role 13 years.
Mhm.
Was that 13 years at TELUS?
13 years at TELUS,
Yeah,
25
there's
years in total.
some paper around, yeah. What's that been like in over 13 years? Because obviously a lot's changed just in the last few years. But what was it like maybe when you first started at TELUS to how it is now, procurement generally?
Hmm, great question. When I first started at TELUS, it was 2010. I was, it was a very new procurement team. So I was part of maybe the original group hired, and there wasn't a lot in place at the time. So I've been able to see this evolution of just getting processes and tools together, working with the stakeholders internally, selling the value proposition of what procurement brings to the table. So I would say that is a good few years in the beginning. And now we run pretty much like a well-oiled machine, and we have over 100 people in procurement at TELUS supporting various different lines of business.
Lovely, and 100 people, and obviously people are a massive part of the puzzle, aren't they? And
Mhm.
keeping them happy is not always easy. But
Right.
where are people in terms of TELUS in procurement? Because obviously recruiting them and retaining them is such a key part to business, isn't it? So where are people for you?
So people, it's the most important thing is the people that you have. So in terms of hiring and retaining them, That I would say is the biggest challenge because it is a very tough marketplace right now for procurement people. There aren't enough of them and everybody wants them. So I hire very carefully. So I look for people who are, above all, a good cultural fit. TELUS
Mm,
has an exceptional culture, and we want to hire people with the values that we think are important, people who are excited about the work and learning, people who are coachable and motivated. Quite often, we get referrals from existing team members. We hire from our organization's website, LinkedIn, recruiters.
mm,
And I retain staff by having the mindset that I'm here to serve them, support
mm.
them, and their mental health. I've heard horror stories of the way people have been treated at other companies, and I want to make sure that they know they are in a safe work environment where bad behavior won't fly. I
Mm.
have my team members' backs, and they know that. I also make sure I check in with them on things like workload, priorities. I provide guidance and route to escalations where needed. Career development is also important. We have an employee survey that will indicate what we're doing well and what we need to focus on. We develop plans to address any areas that the team identifies as important. And I'm personally proud of the fact that many of my team members have developed their skills, which enabled them to move on to the next level in their careers. I'm lucky to be part of such a great organization that offers those kinds of opportunities because we'd like to retain the talent that we have
Mm.
grown and rather than see them leave our company.
Well, yeah, exactly as you say. There's no point sort of bringing them in if 6 months later they're just going to leave again. Is that we've got to be able to work with them because it's as much of a success story for them as it is for you if you can sort of nurture them along that journey. Because it does seem like there's a massive sort of global talent shortage in procurement. Do you think that there's one thing in particular that you would put that down to, or do you think it's a whole host of sort of external factors as to why this is happening?
Yeah, I think that more and more companies are realizing how important it is to have a procurement department. Depending on the size of the organization, what that looks like could be different anywhere. But considering everything we've been through over the pandemic um, and supply chain issues, I think procurement becomes increasingly important as a partner to the business in helping to solve those challenges that have come up during that time and continue to be driven. So being able to go out to the market, source good people, make sure that they feel part of the team, they are very clear on what their goals are, deliverables are, the expectations are. And the procurement team is a team that helps to make sure that the company can save money as well as avoid risk factors. Um, so if you don't have a procurement team, you tend to do all of this on your own, and you may not have the deep knowledge that is required to negotiate contracts or negotiate pricing or terms. And so those things being as important as they are, I think more and more companies are realizing that and are trying to establish procurement. And that becomes a challenge because then we're all fighting for resources that are out there, which I don't think are growing as quickly as the need is growing.
Hmm. I'd like to touch on diversity as well in procurement. What's your opinion actually at the moment in terms of maybe female representation in procurement and maybe minority groups in procurement? Is there much happening in terms of sort of a greater? Is it obviously there's still a massive imbalance, isn't there? But is much happening positively towards that direction?
Yeah, I would say so. I- so I'll put it this way to be perfectly transparent. When I started in procurement years and years ago, I would quite often be the only female and minority in the room. And that is a challenge. And now I think things have changed where there is much more diversity in the workplace and in procurement in general, which was traditionally very male dominated. Now we have that great diversity of more females, probably more like 50-50 now, and lots of minorities as well. If you look at my team, I would say probably 80% of it is minorities. And so I think that diversity of thought that you bring into your team is a game changer.
Mm.
And if more companies were open to looking at the procurement department as non-traditional and opening the door for that diversity of thought, it brings innovation as well. So I would think that more companies would take advantage of that and diversify their organization.
And it probably brings us nicely on to supplier diversity, which is, something I know that you're very passionate about and you do a lot of work in. Maybe you can start by telling me a little bit about supplier diversity for those that maybe aren't that familiar with it. But in terms of where we are today in terms of supplier diversity, because I know it's become an increasingly important topic in recent years.
Sure. So this is one of the loves of my life is supplier diversity. And the program today in a lot of companies requires dedicated resources and commitment from the business and the leadership to be successful. It's well underway in most companies and the government, but there's still a long way to go. TELUS has a membership with all the accredited organizations in Canada, and procurement leaders in our company are either board members or participants in diversity events where we provide sponsorships. We use these opportunities to get involved and contribute to the success of the diverse companies. In our annual planning cycle with the business, we include plans to engage with diverse suppliers that could provide goods or services that we need. I feel that we've come a long way in a few short years, but the end goal is to not have a separate program for diverse and Indigenous suppliers, but to have them embedded in our day to day sourcing activities. Until then, we continue to advocate for the inclusion of diverse and Indigenous suppliers with the business, as well as work with our tier one suppliers on opportunities to partner with those businesses.
Because obviously at the moment, is there a cost, do you think, by not having a program? I know obviously you said that eventually, hopefully that is all smoothed over and we don't need to have these. But at the moment, is there sort of maybe a cost and, a negative of not sort of embracing supplier diversity? Because I know that you mentioned obviously about, what it brings in terms of innovation and that extra diversity of thought. But how costly is it for organizations to not sort of pay any attention to it?
I believe that there's still companies out there that don't have a program. And I know this because I mentor companies on how to start a program in their organization. The cost of not having a program is innovation, plain and
Mm,
simple. Diverse businesses are agile thought leaders and will bring innovation to an organization that would otherwise continue to do business with those that have been longtime partners, even if they aren't necessarily doing a good job.
mm,
My personal experience has been that I can call up a diverse business that we're partnered with, and they will always be happy to support and guide as thought leaders. Not all large organizations are like that. Not all large company partners are like that. It's also important to note that diverse suppliers are part of our community and we need to support their economic growth.
mm, mm. How much do you think that things like COVID-19, massive global events like that, nobody could have predicted these sort of things. But in terms of supplier diversity, how much did it shine a light that you need to have a plan B? Something else in place, maybe local suppliers. Um, you know, the list was endless, wasn't there? How much did it show the importance that there is somewhere else you can go in terms of supplier diversity?
Yeah, I definitely think going through the pandemic and the subsequent supply shortages and everything that kind of domino affected from there was a wake up call for a lot of companies. And diverse suppliers are another source of goods and services that could have been tapped into during that time. One example I can give you is with the shortage of PPE during the pandemic,
Mm,
as we all know about. And we were able to work with some smaller, diverse businesses to source PPE, where the regular suppliers we had were not able to provide it due to shortages in the market, as well as other companies buying up all of their inventory. So, engaging diverse suppliers when you have a need for products and services gives you that alternate supply source, as well as increased competitiveness.
mm. And obviously, there are lots of things on the CPO agenda at the moment. There's digital transformation, there's sustainability, there's obviously diversity in the workplace. We mentioned obviously women in procurement as well, and obviously supplier diversity as well. Where does it sit at the moment among all these different issues? Because I think probably a CPO owner has never had so many things to think about. Where do you think it is at the table?
It's definitely on our agenda. It is one of the pillars under sustainability and is as important as digital transformation. It is it's a necessity, and it is addressed in our supplier code of conduct as an important part of our business and should be an important part of our supplier's business.
Mm,
It's great for an infusion of innovation and agility, as well as the way we support the economic development and success of our communities. This is a huge marketplace out there with opportunity for those amazing diverse suppliers to grow and thrive given the chance. Diversity and competition in the marketplace is actually good for all of us.
Because it used to. I know it used to be something like a nice to have, didn't it? Obviously, it's now essential. If you don't have it, you're struggling. You're not being innovative enough. You need to be proactive, and potentially you're left stagnant and left behind. Do you think companies are seeing this now today in 2023? Do you think they're realizing actually, they're looking around at their competitors and they're seeing what they've got? Well, if I don't have it, I'm missing out on something. Is that fair to say?
I would definitely say that's true. I think more and more organizations are looking at the fact that their typical partnerships were great for when they had them, but maybe it's lacking innovation now. Maybe things need to be shaken up. And the way to do that is with all these great businesses, whether they're minority owned, business owned, indigenous, they are able to tap into those talent pools and bring different kinds of innovation to the table so that they can take their business forward and not remain stagnant, because the world will
Mm.
pass you by if you don't evolve and start thinking about what your next 5, 10, 15 years are going to look like.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I think it also comes down to change as well. And, people don't really like change traditionally, do they? But I think the thing is, you need to progress. What would you say to those people that may be fearful of change and don't quite want to sort of jump on the bandwagon, as it were, and are just very stuck in their own ways?
I would say you have to get with, the 21st century. The way that we did things before might have been okay, but with technology, the progression in business has been exponential, right, over the last little while. And, there's, I remember reading an article and just the technology curve, the way that it's going, if we don't keep up and we don't evolve and we don't start to integrate those partnerships where there is so much more innovation and agility to get to that next level quicker, I think those companies are going to be left behind. And
Mm.
so do you want to take the risk of shaking it up and having a new partner and working through what that looks like? Or do you want to stay where you are and maybe not exist in a few years? So I think there's a risk on each side. You have to just weigh what's going to be most successful for you.
Yeah, and obviously comes back to new technology like AI, machine learning, automation, all those things, and they're all really exciting in procurement, aren't they? But people are maybe a little bit conscious of sort of embracing it in terms of bringing it in for the sake of it. And I think that's something that you need to weigh up as well. Well, I'd love to have some machine learning, but is it going to improve what I've already got? How much of a challenge do you think companies that maybe are faced with in terms of, wanting to embrace technology, but maybe not just doing it for the sake of doing it?
I would say that companies would want to embrace the technology, but do the research. So look at your business model, look at how things are set up today. What can you automate? What's going to bring you into the digital age? Where can you find efficiencies that frees up time so you can push your business forward? What are you getting hung up on? What are your pain points? And then do the research. There's tons of companies out there that offer all kinds of solutions, but you have to do the work, right? And educate yourself, meet with them, have presentations, see what they can do for you. Does it make sense? And of course, there's going to be an output of cash for that, but what's your ROI? That's always going to be your tipping point on whether or not that's going to be financially beneficial for you to partner with these companies and push your business forward. So I think it's not about taking the risk to partner with these companies. It's actually taking a risk and not to partner with them.
Mm. And what do you feel like these companies that you want to partner with, need to have? Obviously, trust is such an important part of any sort of collaboration or partnership. But are there any sort of key characteristics that you sort of look for when seeking to establish such a relationship?
Yeah, I think, it's really important the experience that they have. Where have they been able to drive their solutions for the betterment of another client that they've worked with? What's their background? Do you feel they're credible enough to kind of pull it off, so to speak? I also look for just that cultural fit as well, which I do with all partnerships. Is does this company believe in the success of what we're trying to achieve? And for my company, it's everything is about our customer. At the end of
Mm.
the day, our customer needs to be happy. They need to have the goods and services that we provide work and have reliability. And are we partnered with companies that have that same vision and deem these same things as important? Because when you're aligned on what you want your end goal to be, that is one of the recipes for success. So if I feel that there's a bit of a gap there, I may not be as inclined to partner with that company unless I feel we're reaching for the same goal.
It's about being really selective then for you, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. And what about the future now? What do you feel like that really looks like? And I know that's probably quite a difficult thing to predict because, if I asked you that question 5 years ago, your answer might have been very, very different. But today, what do you feel like is pushing the conversation in procurement forward, and how do we get there?
Yeah, I would say the future of procurement and taking it to the next level would be all around adopting a digital and global mindset. With the exponential evolution of digitization and artificial intelligence in the workplace, along with how the pandemic changed the way we work, is going to drive a deeper play in the procurement world. Having exceptional skills will matter more than where you are physically located. Having a great network, both in your workplace and externally, will be a benefit. Having strong relationships with suppliers and a greater understanding of how the supply chain is changing. Procurement, ensuring they are an integral part of the business, will be key in the success of any organization as challenges in the marketplace continue.
And as a final part of the podcast, I always ask my guests this question. It's so if I was to take you back to the beginning of your career journey, what advice would you have for a younger version of yourself, or maybe someone in your position, if they were doing it all over again? How would you go about it? Would you change anything?
It's a great question. I try not to really have regrets, but I would say I would tell myself to have more confidence in my abilities. I find as you become more skilled and gain more experience, the confidence tends to build. However, I would push myself to take a seat at the table earlier. I would continue to learn, fail fast, try again, take more risks, mentor more people, have more mentors, lead with empathy, and pay attention to how things can change around me in order to get ahead of it. I also don't know that I would change anything as I feel everything happened the way it did to get me where I am today. I work with amazing people. My CPO is a wonderful leader who I learn from every day. I get to mentor with an amazing SVP and treasurer at TELUS who is as smart as she is human. And most importantly, I'm grateful to be able to support myself and my daughter, which is why I do everything I do.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, and thank you very much for appearing on the CPO Strategy podcast today, Ashifa.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the CPO Strategy podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, make sure that you subscribe or like our social media pages so that you never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.